before I get into the detail of the presentation, which is about putting the community in community meals, I just want to touch on the outlook on commissioning that we're taking in Sefton, that we took on this particular initiative, and we're taking as we go forward. So from my perspective, this is how I see, that's how I see commissioning. So for me, commissioning is about how we use all of the resources available to achieve the desired outcomes in the most efficient, effective and sustainable way. So just reflecting on the resources that are included in the box, and that's not all of them, but that's our financial resources, it's other people's financial resources, it's assets within the community, it's the workforce employed within that community, it's the people themselves. And it's using all of those resources available to achieve the outcomes. Also, from a council or a commissioner perspective, it's also about using these different approaches along the bottom. So it's about our ability to influence and facilitate or to encourage things to happen as much as it's about us procuring or providing services. So just briefly now about what we did. So community meals, or often known as Meals on Wheels, okay, was a service in Sefton which delivered hot food to about 350 vulnerable people. Largely older people, but not entirely older people. And it was delivered by a contractor who we paid, but the people themselves actually paid for the meals, probably about £3.50 a meal. Now, in 2012, the council decided this isn't a statutory service. We're obliged to ensure that people's needs are met, but we're not obliged to provide this service. And so they made a decision to cease the service to make a budgetary saving. So that then, well, what we're going to do? There's still vulnerable people who need nutrition. They need access to meals. So the approach we took was, first of all, we surveyed those people, telephone and postal surveys to understand what it was they valued about the service, what outcomes that service was delivering for them. And some of what came back from that, some of the initial kind of negative reaction was that people saying things like, well, that's the only contact my mum has each day. And our initial reaction to that was, well, that's pretty sad really, isn't it? Because actually the reality is that contact is a 2-minute thing. Hi Ethel, there's your dinner, see ya. Now it was contact, but it's not quality contact. So the approach we took was about how can you build on that. So the next thing we did was further engagement, one-to-one engagement with the service users, but we did it through our colleagues in the voluntary and community sector. So in particular, we worked with Sefton CVS, and we worked Council of Voluntary Services, and we worked with Age Concern. And they actually visited the people's homes, and in the bottom left hand, as you're looking at it, corner, you can see the older people's outcome star, which is a tool they used to understand the outcomes, the wider outcomes that the people receiving the service wanted to achieve. And then, particularly because they were from that voluntary and community sector, they were able to link people in to other activity within the community, to other services that are available that people perhaps didn't realise, in order to achieve more of those people's outcomes. And they also assisted the individuals in finding an alternative and to link them with those other services and activities. And working with ourselves, we also collectively developed a marketplace of alternative providers. So by the time we ceased the service, which was only about a 3-month project, we'd identified 40+ organisations within Sefton who were able to provide that service to the people who had previously received it from the council. And that was a mixture of some national retailers providing delivery services, but also lots of community outlets, so people providing luncheon clubs who were also able to adapt and deliver, but also local caterers and retail outlets who were already delivering, for example, butties and hot food to offices, and said, well, we can do that. And again, working, but predominantly colleagues from the voluntary sector then also developed a guide for the older people as to how to choose their provider, and also a guide for those providers who are now dealing with a vulnerable group of people about how they could deal with and highlighting the safeguarding issues that they might identify in undertaking that delivery. So, in taking that approach, and I was keen to present today because I think tech is fantastic. I think tech is brilliant, but actually a lot of this is just about thinking about things differently, putting a different view on things and seeing how we can work together collectively. The most high-tech thing we did, you may have heard of these things called websites. Okay, well, we used our website to provide information, and that's the extent of the tech. The rest was people and different ways of looking at it. So what did we achieve? Well, first of all, we decommissioned a service for vulnerable people. The council saved approximately £250,000, which actually was the entire budget. We improved the outcomes, so I've talked already about the outcome star. So not only were the people receiving the meals that they needed, but also they'd been put in touch with other services that would improve their quality of life. We also provided more choice and control, which is a key thing in social care in particular, but a key thing generally. So the people now, rather than having the one provider that the council provided and the limited range of meals that they could offer, they now had a marketplace to choose from. Many of the options were at the same price or even a lower price, but it was now their choice. We supported the VCF, the voluntary community faith organisations, not only those who were in the meal provision game, but also those other services and activities that people were linked into. And we supported local businesses. I don't have a precise figure, but the meals, the people were paying to the council £3.50 a meal. So there's about £250,000, I think, which has gone into local businesses and into that business sector for the provision of that service. And finally, we improved community resilience and sustainability, because people are getting this service now without any reliance on public service funding, public sector funding. And crucially, particularly as we're a democratic organisation, this was done, there was some initial concerns, as I've highlighted earlier, but this was done without a single complaint. And I believe it was done without a single complaint because of the approach we took, and in particular because of the engagement through our colleagues in the community and voluntary sector and linking people in to achieving better outcomes. Finally, the work undertaken in March of this year was recognised with a national award from the Local Government Chronicle, a national award of Commissioning Pioneer. Now they spoke about the brave and innovative approach that we had taken, but in particular what they recognised was that we'd been outcome focused. It wasn't focused on outputs, it was on achieving that outcome for those people who needed the nutrition. That we had engaged effectively with the people for who the service was provided, but also with the marketplace. We had provided that choice and control, and also cost effectiveness for the individuals and for the council. We had developed resilience and sustainability, as I've touched on already. We'd also demonstrated effective market management. A few businesses adjusted their model ever so slightly, but actually most of those businesses, most of those opportunities were already out there. All we did was marshal it and direct it and raise awareness of it. We also maximised the use of all the resources available, going back to that first slide that I put up. So voluntary community faith sector organisations, local businesses, the people themselves, and our ability to facilitate and enable something to happen. And I guess the final point, which is absolutely crucial within the current public sector position, is we commission for outcomes without money. It can be done.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.